Welcome back to the brand new season of the ADHD Kids Can Thrive podcast. I'm your host, Kate Brownfield, a certified ADHD parent coach, and I believe that families raising kids with ADHD can thrive. One of the most powerful ways we do that is by understanding ADHD more deeply. What's really going on in your child's brain, what's driving the hard moments, and what helps your family feel more steady and connected. Because the truth is, no child and no family walks in this path in the exact same way, and you don't have to figure it out alone. I'm really glad you're here. I hope you learned something new today that you can carry straight into real life at home. All right, let's get into it. Enjoy the show. My guest today is Saul Malek. He is America's emerging voice on the modern gambling landscape. Raised in Houston, Texas, Saul attended St. John's School, where he explored a wide range of interests, but the one that truly lit him up was fantasy sports. What started as a fun way to connect with friends eventually shifted when he was introduced to sports betting in college. The pace and intensity pulled him in fast, and over less than 2 years, gambling cost him sleep, money, time, relationships, and nearly his life. Today, Saul is more than 5 years abstinent from gambling and has turned his lived experience into a mission to educate and protect others from the risks of modern betting. He's been invited to speak with schools, podcasts, news outlets, and organizations as a trusted voice on how gambling is changing and what families and communities need to know. Hi, Saul. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you.
Hey, me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be good. We were just talking offline a little bit that we both saw a social media post that just said that the fastest growing addiction with young men is gambling.
It's
So this is a very timely conversation, and one that kids, especially boys and girls too with ADHD, are really at risk of this new, it's not new gambling, but it's way, way more accessible for children. And so it's a risk, especially for kids with ADHD. So it's just an honor to have you here. And I'm really looking forward for you to share your wisdom with
Sure.
experts and parents who listen to this podcast to learn more. So let's start with just a little bit about your own personal story and how you became this advocate and expert and speaker talking about this.
Well, Kate, if we go all the way back to my early childhood when I was around 4 years old, I would say was when I was diagnosed formally with ADHD. So I grew up with difficulty even in, I would say, preschool, kindergarten, with being impulsive. I'd blurt things out, make repetitive kind of like movements and things like that. My parents saw that I was different from my twin brother, from the other kids. And so from an early age, I recall visits with psychiatrists, doctors, things like that, different medications, all things to try to curb some of the impulsivity, some of the disorganization, some of these issues that really became more apparent in middle school and then in high school. So, a little background on me. I grew up in, a pretty nice area in Houston and had the privilege of attending a prep school, middle school through high school. And as you can imagine, it became increasingly demanding. And the older I got, the more I noticed the stereotypical success of those people around me, parents, peers, and things. And so I guess I bring that up to say when I started gambling was my sophomore year of college. But before that, I was a part of fantasy baseball leagues with $20 buy-in. It was actually a way for me to sort of curb the ADHD, the feeling different with the impulsivity. I was able to make friends through this participation, which I know a lot of young men can relate to. And so when I got introduced to sports betting as a college sophomore, I felt I was really falling behind my peers. At this point, my twin brother was at an Ivy League university, and I didn't really have a lot of direction or feeling of being competent or, able to keep up well in college. And gambling was this get rich quick. I know sports. I've studied it since I was a kid. Very quick dopamine, of course.
Yeah.
And I was able to brag about it to my friends because I also felt some anxiety with around girls and stuff. And all my fraternity buddies were talking about all the girls they were hooking up with and all this. And I thought, well, shoot, I have this gambling thing that's going to put me at an equal playing field to those around me. So I feel that was a bit long-winded, but that's really
That
the
was
context of where I got into gambling and how it served a purpose for me in the context of the ADHD.
Yeah. Did you feel like it helped too, like, kind of a boredom that you felt or
Oh, yeah.
the
Yeah, that's the
stimulation
other
that you
thing.
got from it? Yeah.
Right, is that, being sitting still, and that's one of the points I actually make with students and parents is seeing the outside world of people working 9 to 5s and sitting around at a desk doing an internship, whatever. It's like that doesn't apply to me. Like, I wanna be making quick deals and quick plays and all this action and all this constant stimulation. I mean, it's all a part of it.
Yeah. Okay, and did you okay, so there's so many things coming at young kids. Why did you pick gambling versus marijuana, alcohol, drugs, sex, and rock and roll are in that play too? What was there any difference with what gambling did for you versus any other kind of addiction or substance abuse?
That's a really good question. I would say with gambling, the first point was it was something that was sort of brought to me, I would say. I mean, I had experimented, so to speak, with certain like free casino apps and things in high school, but it wasn't ever addictive to me. I kind of put it away when I went off to college because I figured I'd have to focus. I would say the gambling was introduced to me by a friend, so it was like, oh, once I discovered it, it kind of became my thing. But I
Okay.
think also there is an element to it that alcohol, drug use doesn't have where there is some element of perceived control behind it. And being this guy who wants to be smart and driven and successful and make things happen, gambling, it's like I am in charge of placing a winning bet or not. I can brag about this. And it really for me, which I don't know that a lot of people relate to this aspect of the sports betting, I was able to create this whole dream world in my own head where I would like imagine where the scores were going to load when I'm following the game and I'm creating this whole imaginary world. And it really took me from reality in a way where I mean, I've been drunk before, and I feel like that's not the same experience as this whole gambling universe is.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So this started your sophomore year of college.
Yeah, so I was 19, that was in 2017.
Yeah, okay. So how did it turn into an addiction? Like, how did you fall into this
You know,
place
I
where
I
you needed to get help and have that has eventually led you to becoming this is your mission in life to help other kids, right, and families?
yeah, I would say so, absolutely. I look back to really a defining moment, I would say was moving from texting a bookie, the guy facilitating the sports bets. At the beginning, first few weeks, I was texting this person a game that I liked, and at the end, we would exchange the money through Venmo, and it would be one bet at a time. But as I recall, and I believe within a month and a half or 2 months, that's kind of the timeline I remember. I was made an online account from this bookie to where I was given a credit limit, and it
Oh,
was like,
wow.
"Hey, you have $500 in credit that you can do whatever the heck you want with over that week. Bet on whatever games you want, and we'll square up at the end." And that I mean, by this point, I had already started kinda gradually increasing. I was like, $20, $50, whatever, increasing my bet size. But this platform gave me the ability to bet on things I didn't even know existed. And I would say that was sort of the turning point of seeing I can bet on, oh, there's tennis overseas. Like, that seems so interesting. That's another market to try to make money on and to enjoy this feeling. And so I would say the digital aspect of at my fingertips, doing it all on a website really sped it up and made it so that the lack of discipline behind it was much more apparent because now I was just betting on random stuff with no analysis or
Controls.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. They're just
Yeah.
like, whatever. And I would say, when you ask the progression of it too, it was, my mom started to see I was making some deposits to my bank account, like Venmo money transfers in the early stages. And I had told her because she asked, where am I getting this money? I'm not employed. I'm a college student. And when I came clean about it being sports betting, I remember my being concerned and telling me not to do that. And she had mentioned that in my family, my dad's father had a gambling problem and really cautioning all the things you would hope a parent would say. And I see that as another turning point where I really started to lie about this behavior because then I would keep money in my Venmo reserve to be able to pay from that Venmo balance versus it coming from my bank
Yeah.
account,
Yeah.
meaning
So your mom
to
couldn't
see it.
track what was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it just got more and more time consuming. The amounts got bigger, the time spent doing it. I would go out with my girlfriend at the time. I'd started dating a girl and I would be on my phone the whole night looking at the scores, or I'd be waking up at weird times to check scores of games going on overseas. And it was one of those things that I didn't realize at the time, "Oh, this is becoming a huge burden or it's unhealthy." It was like, "Hey, the more the merrier. The more I can do this, I love the feeling. If I lose, I'm gonna get it back, no problem."
Yeah.
And it's just weird, right? I think to not see the consequences until it just, like, slaps you across the face.
Yeah. Well, that can happen, especially when you have ADHD, and that can happen to a lot of people. And that is the risk too of having like an ADHD profile. How did your parents kind of get to the point where they said, Saul needs help? We're
So
taking
what
you in. We're taking you somewhere to help you get help.
Yeah, it came to light in the summertime, so in, like, May or early June of 2018, which was when I was back home for the summer, and at that point, I got into a debt situation with a bookie where it was like I didn't have money in my bank account or in my Venmo to make the payments, and I was seeing a therapist at the time for my ADHD and everything, and I was able to pull this up in my email that I had confided in that therapist about what do I do with this gambling situation with my parents, and I have to tell them? I don't wanna tell them, I'm afraid, and I was urged by the therapist to tell my parents so because maybe I was in danger if I don't pay the guy. That's how I remember my parents getting re-involved in this in May, thinking that I'd given up gambling months ago, and it was, like, not something they'd considered, and so I would say their first real involvement once this became a problem was concern and disappointment in the lying because I really wasn't a liar growing up. But they agreed to pay off the debt for me under the condition that I then pay them later. But they were concerned they didn't want me to owe money to some bookie. They didn't know who it was. It seemed sketchy. And I recall from there using that payment to be able to generate another line of credit once I made the payment to the bookie, got in more debt. I best of my recollection, I went to my parents again, and that's when they had said, "We need to look for help because it seems that this is more than just being defiant or irresponsible, that might not be something
Yeah.
you can even control." And so they were the ones who had found Gamblers Anonymous for me and instructed that I go to that once I returned to school to begin my junior year of college. And that was, I would say, my junior year was really kind of the everything hit the fan. It was the worst year. Really, the gambling was just out of control and the lying was out of control. And, my parents were not always in the loop. They would be brought back in if I got into debt with like someone at my school, because then I would start blocking people I owed money to, finding new contacts to give me credit. And so then I ended up owing all these different people money. And if it was someone at my school, I need to get my parents involved again and admit that I was lying. And, without getting into every single moment, you can kind of tell that this was just a snowball effect of something that was well beyond my control. And I would say this, Kate, because I'm sure with the families you work with, I don't know if I'm sure, but I would think that a lot of these kids aren't necessarily bad kids. They just like have no idea how to
Yeah.
regulate their emotions or their impulses. And so that made it worse for me because I'm like, I'm not a bad guy. You like, please feel badly for me. I don't even mean to be doing this. And here I am just destroying not only my life, but my family around me.
Yeah. Okay, so did you need more help though than just Gamblers Anonymous to kind of get out of this?
Well, I had some. I had my parents had found a therapist who specialized in gambling addiction treatment, who was mainly beneficial for figuring out the payment situation with the bookies and how to best communicate with them. Because by this point, I would get calls and texts from random numbers of people like, "Hey, you owe this guy money. I'm part of his operation.
Oh
You
god.
better pay."
Yeah.
And I'd get into all these arguments with people, and they would call. It was a whole disaster. So the therapist was good at helping me come up with an honest payment plan and kinda get some of the pressure off from these people. But in terms of actually becoming better emotionally equipped to deal with life and to live in a world without gambling, I would say really it has just been Gamblers Anonymous, and I still go to meetings. I would say it's provided a lot of structure that naturally I don't have, and it provides a sense of community that I think I was probably lacking before. And even the concept of having a higher power, like faith in something that's not
Yeah.
myself, is really important because my own thinking can be very obsessive, can be incorrect, can be irrational. And if I trust my own thinking, then I could wind up back in the addiction, and I think that's so tough. Again, I don't love speaking for other people, but I would think for a lot of gifted ADHDers like myself, it's really tough to let go of your own intelligence or your own way of thinking.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
it's
proud of
difficult.
you, Saul. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing your
thanks.
story. And I'm
Yeah.
really impressed with how far you've come. Thank you. I just feel very proud
Oh, well, thank you. I mean,
as a
it was just
listener.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to overcome. And you've done that and you're sharing your story. And I think betting has just evolved and become easier since you had your own
Oh, yeah.
struggles.
Oh, yeah.
And my own adult children were telling me about Kalshi.
Oh, the prediction market stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and the people who've created this are billionaires.
Oh, yeah, I've seen the list of, like, the youngest billionaires, and it's a lot of these, gambling
Yes,
interests.
they've created these apps that Kalshi, which is it's incredible, right? So it's even more accessible to all people and especially young people and young adults, right? Who
Sure.
so kind of what's your words of wisdom through this life for for kids and parents who are listening to you of, is it's just it's, like, so accessible. It's like even if you are trying to maintain some kind of self-control, you can see how it's a slippery slope of losing control so quickly because it's just so easy, and so you don't have to leave your bed to
Mm.
be able to do these kind of things.
Well, I mean, I think so, like, in my circumstance, when I did finally quit in July of 2019, I'd hit such a bottom point where I was genuinely feeling suicidal, and it was either like, just take a chance on GA finally, because for about a year, I really hadn't given it a serious shot, and so I say that to say whatever my external circumstances, whatever was going on in the gambling world around me was insignificant compared to internally, like, what I felt I needed to do for myself. But that's not to undermine the reality that it is pretty inescapable now. And so I guess my caution or suggestion to parents and people who are struggling, young people, is learning to coexist in this world that you really can't change much of. You can't stop Kalshi or anything from existing. So how do you internally change to where it's like for me, I walk down the street and see some homeless guy smoking a cigarette or something. It's like, that's around me, it's in my face, but I don't then feel compelled to
Yeah,
smoke a cigarette because I'm not driven by that. And so I think, working in GA and developing coping mechanisms and really getting to a place where I'm not constantly triggered, but also recognizing that I am addicted to it and I could go back at any time. And if I surround myself with the wrong things, or I'm not going to meetings or talking to my sponsor, then I'm endangering myself. So I guess that would be my point, is how can you adapt to this world and, learn to live in
yeah,
this world like them?
yeah. Okay, so how are you spending your days, Saul? You're talking to high school kids, sharing your story?
A lot of high school. So it was really cool to do speaking and training and everything full time this past year, 2025. So I would say a lot of my day is usually uninteresting unless I'm actually at an event speaking. I spend a lot of time hammering out LinkedIn, email, Instagram messages, just trying to get the next gig. And in a way, it some of it mimics the whole gambling thing. And I realize that. I think that there's part of that energy that will never fully go away. So how do I reposition it to where a lot of that stuff I was doing gambling, like finding new outlets to gamble. I do a lot of cold outreach, a lot of persistence, a lot of things like that. And I'm using that to drive the speaking stuff. So a lot of my day, I'm either speaking somewhere, presenting, doing a training or something, or I'm doing outreach. But here I am in Atlanta because I am speaking at a school tomorrow.
Yeah, good for you. And do you talk to parent groups and young adults?
I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what's really great is a lot of the schools will also keep me around to do a parent session, and in that, I find that I've made it effective because I try to keep it as practical as possible, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of pushback that I hear from parents of, "Well, what if we just do $5 and it's a way for maybe dad to bond with his son or something?" We don't really wanna give that up, and I'm never one to advocate for youth gambling, like, I don't think kids should gamble or anything, but I at least try to work with parents where they are and kinda offer some education and some tangible takeaways for them.
Yeah. What do you just from your story, I've learned a lot without you saying too much about your parents, but if you reflect on that, what role did your parents play in helping you kind of go through a very dark period and come out again and ride that roller coaster of deep darkness, suicidal thoughts that you mentioned, to now you're on a mission, you found a purpose, you're using your skills, your talents in a way that's more for good than self-destruction. Like, what role did they play? Like, what's your advice for the parents who
I would say that my parents were learning along the way because I don't know that parents really are trained or expect their child to become addicted to anything. My parents from a young age were very involved in overseeing, managing some of my behavioral disciplinary problems and things, and so I'd mentioned even from a young age seeing all sorts of doctors, all that. My parents made sure I had accommodations in school for extended time for tests and those sort of things. And so when it came time to the gambling and the addiction, I would say their first response, like I'd mentioned, was to try to pay the bookie so then I would pay them. They were trying to minimize the risk that I had to some underworld gambling
Yeah,
thing as much as possible. And I would say what ultimately was the most helpful was when they'd talked to this old timer who was my sponsor in Gamblers Anonymous, who had told them when it'd gotten so bad that he had said, don't bail him out under any circumstance. Like, even if someone at his school is coming after him for money or anything, to stop with the financial bailouts. And that was real difficult because there was so much unknown and so much fear that my parents had about this whole gambling universe. But I would say they were consistently supportive and encouraging me to get well, but I think they grew themselves in terms of kind of pulling back and letting me struggle, letting me suffer so I could get closer to the point of wanting to concede to the addiction. And so
yeah,
I think maybe that's what I would say to parents is there is a way to maybe show tough love and be supportive without enabling the child.
yeah. That's great advice, Saul. Because even I think there's a lot of young adults who are struggling. Maybe it's not with gambling, but with something else.
Sure.
And parents are kind of some parents feel trapped about how do they support their kid without enabling them, so
Right.
that they
Right.
do find the way to kind of like lift themselves up and get going back in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Very
think so.
wise words, Saul.
Thank you.
More than you may know at this stage
Oh,
of life.
thanks.
So really appreciate it. Okay, so if parents, wherever they're listening, we have listeners all over the world, actually. If your child is struggling or young adult, you see them struggling with addiction, what resources should parents seek out to try to begin taking some steps to help their child?
I'd say with gambling specifically, I am a big fan of GA meetings, Gamblers
Yeah,
Anonymous,
okay.
and
Is that
they're all
global?
yeah, they're
Yeah,
all over.
okay, great.
But there's also online support meetings on it. There's a website called gamblersinrecovery.com, and so there are virtual meetings if people are not able to go to in-person meetings or anything. I find that effective. I know the National Council on Problem Gambling, they have various resources and things as well for parents. I also have like updated gambling definitions for parents to be aware of, just to have those conversations with their kids, and different discussion prompts and things that
Okay.
parents can have.
Is that
I
on
would
your
also
website?
It is not, but I can email it to you
Oh, okay. Yeah.
if you want.
Well, and I'll direct people to your website too.
Oh yeah, and then if anyone wants to reach out, I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation with them as well. The other thing I'd say is having a therapist who specializes in gambling is important. There are also treatment centers specific to gambling. There's one called Alchemist that's especially well known, where I've met some of the people from there, and it's, well respected treatment center in Arizona. So there's treatment out there. There's, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. And if you were trying to find I guess you could Google the therapist that
Yeah, I mean, the guy I use.
specialize specializes in gambling addiction. I didn't know there was somebody that specific.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but that can make a difference, right? Because I'm
I would
impressed
say
that
that
they were really good at prompting you on how to get yourself out of these pickles.
right. Yeah, that was really, really effective for me in dealing with, because that was so overwhelming, was how to talk to these bookies.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
glad you're alive, Saul.
Oh, thanks. Me too. I no, I mean, it's a brutal, mental illness to be addicted to gambling, and like you said, our friend, Dave Ramsey was spot on about this is the next whatever epidemic for young men. Hey, it's already here.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was great. Do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up, Saul?
I'm thinking. Because, I mean, you see, this is your work, is this whole world of ADHD and gambling and everything. Have you noticed more families talking about this issue as well in your work?
I well, I see all people with ADHD are prone to addiction. What that addiction looks like varies. Gambling is one of those. I see parents who are struggling with young adults who are stuck in some kind of addiction, right? And they don't know how to help their young adult kind of move through that without giving into it.
Right.
There's like this balance, right? So I feel like, Saul, you just represent so much of how this can happen, but how also it can be moved through for you and for your family, right? And kind of you just demonstrated the steps of how families can help move through this.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it is definitely taking a lot of, adjusting and things for my family, and, I think they're reminded of the fact that I'm not cured of this, and I still have a lot of these. I mean, I didn't graduate from the ADHD stuff either. I still have to
Yeah,
get a cleaner out
exactly.
to my apartment and stuff. There's still things I struggle with. It's just managing it in a way that I'm able to live a pretty decent life now.
Yeah. It's a part of who you are, right? It's just Saul, but it sounds like you've found your way and it's just such a gift. It's your light, right? It's your lighthouse.